welcome everyone. It's Susanne here from the Project Manager Clinic. And as usual, today we're bringing you something sensational. Well, I think it's sensational because it's a subject that I have not quite poo-pooed, but I've really wondered if it's real, I've got to say. So you'll all know Margaret Santos because Margaret is here every month as our mentor, as our expert. And Margaret has kindly put the slide deck together again for this one. But today you'll see a new face, which is Alex Henry. And Alex has got quite a bit of experience across the board, project manager, change transformation lead, digital ERP, enterprise, a lot of stuff. And you've also worked in a number of different industries. So Alex, seeing as you're the new kid on the block here at the Project Manager Clinic, can you just give us a couple of sentences about yourself and why this is an interest to you?
Sure. Okay. Hi, thank you, Suzanne, for that lovely introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar on fractional project management. I am Alex Henry. I've been a project manager for many years. What that generally translates into like sort of 30 plus. I am UK born, came to Australia about 20 odd years ago. And I've been a project manager all that time across various sectors, airline, banking, media, retail. And I have only just kind of recently dabbled in fractional project management. I've done a bit, but not extensively. And it's fascinated me because of its flexibility, and also because I think you're right, Suzanne. I think the subject is becoming more center ground when it comes to into what people are looking for employment. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent, because it actually came to my notice because of a post that you did, Alex, on LinkedIn. And then I went off and asked a whole bunch of people in the project management world, have you heard of what this thing is? And they went, no. I think you might have heard, Margaret, but it was like, well, no, we don't really think this is a thing. It's maybe a perpetuated marketing thing. So Margaret and I started talking about it. And Margaret, why is this of interest to you, this subject?
This is of interest because it actually is more favourable towards the employee, I think, because the recruiter is working for, or the intermediary is working for the employee to serve the client. And generally what happens is that the recruiter in consulting serves the client rather than the employee. And so that's really the biggest difference in fractional employment. And, you know, it's becoming a thing. And, you know, I looked into a lot of the research that, you know, is provided with, you know, on the slide deck and data. And a lot of fractional, you know, employment is really springing up. There's a lot of fractional organisations that, you know, have fractional employees on the books that they then send out to clients.
So when I first looked at this, I thought it was a load of rubbish, like I said, because I had a consulting company, which was a reasonably, you know, sized one. Some of this stuff that we will talk to you about today, we did as a consulting company because we were not a big consulting company. We were a tier 2. So a lot of those things to me, I think, well, that's what we already did, you know. But as you've both alluded, things are changing, and I don't like to say that rapid change, but it sort of is, you know. There's been so many project managers out of work for the last year, certainly. AI is happening, and we've talked about this before, Margaret. There's a lot of stuff happening. So this is just another one that we're going to talk about today. Now, if you're out there and you're watching, please subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up because we do like doing this and we have a great bit of fun. We'll probably go for about 40 minutes, hopefully, and the slides you will see flick up on the screen, but also they will be on the website. So you'll be able to get that information in the slides in the description below. Okay, Margaret, what are we going to talk about today?
So basically, high level, what is fractional recruitment? You know, fractional versus consulting and what is the real difference.
Yeah.
How the charge out rates work versus consulting versus fractional, who wins in this model, and why has this now just sprung up out of,
Yes.
it's become very popular. And in terms of continuity of service, I know that consultants, once they go in, do some work, usually they leave and they go on to the next consulting assignment, and fractional is pretty much like that as well. And then does it work and key risks. So that's pretty much the agenda.
Just on that, consultants go in and, and then they leave, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you've both heard of this, but we used to have a thing called client capture. And as a company owner of a consulting company, I was always aware of client capture. And that doesn't mean that the client is going to capture my person, although that sometimes happens. We've got contracts to try and prevent that.
Yeah.
No, what it means is the consultant becomes more and more like the client that we're actually trying to help, which often is not helpful, because then it levels the playing field, and then they are not, the consultant is not helping, if you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So client capture is always a thing. So consulting itself, I think, is vastly misunderstood, and that's why when I look at this slide deck, I think, well, yes, that's consulting. A lot of it is consulting, because we've had these big players. And Alex, when we were talking before we started, you mentioned McKinsey, and KPMG is another. And so they've perpetuated a way of consulting that I've never thought was very exciting or very good. So, Margaret, I know that you put this together, but let's just talk, if we can. I'm going to ask Alex first, because this is where it came to my attention. What do you think it actually is, this fractional recruitment or fractional leadership, I've also heard termed?
Because I was going to add to Margaret, thank you. I was going to add to Margaret's agenda, really, and just say, right, well, my specialty, my expertise is in project management, and obviously fractional project management. But obviously fractional recruitment, I know, is all part of that. And I was kind of thinking as Margaret was going through that agenda, and just thinking, oh, what phase of a project is appropriate for fractional recruitment? Because I imagine there'd be some points where you can't just pick someone in off the street, sign a contract, and it's going to be someone usually that you know, or someone that the hiring manager will know, or someone that the recruiter will know, and you'll bring them in and you say, right, I want you to do a go live. And you go, oh, well, I need a bit of background. And so that goes against the kind of ethos, or the reason why you're bringing someone in cold, because they need this kind of runway in order to achieve that objective. So I was just thinking, maybe is it more the explore phase or the discovery phase right at the start, where you bring someone in, you say, right, I want you to collect a body of data, and then I want you to say, then I want you to leave, because then we've got another team that can do that internally. So that was really
that's interesting. That's interesting too, because this is another consulting company tip. And Margaret, you and I have talked about this before. So I would go in as the CEO and the most experienced project management person in my company, and sort out whatever the mess was, if it was a mess, or develop the transformation plan. And I'm not talking change management, forget that. No, that's another discussion. And then I would bring one of my people in. So because I knew that I was the kick-ass, basically, person to get it all up and going. And then I would change myself out to a much more easygoing project manager, still senior, and they would finish the project. But you can't do that if you are just recruiting people. You can do it if you've got a consulting company, but not all, as we know, consulting companies do that. What they do is they put a really experienced person in, and then they put a graduate in and charge you the same price. Sorry, consulting companies, I'm hoping you're not doing that anymore, but that's what they used to do, right? So if you think about some of this stuff, and that's a really interesting point that you brought up, Alex, will fractional project management work in that scenario that you're alluding at? When do you swap and change it? Because I was able to keep that consistency, see? That person was not starting blind. So it's very interesting. So we're going to talk a bit about the fractional versus consulting. Continue. I can't say that, Margaret. Of service, the elephant in the room. Continuity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of service, right? So we're going to probably flip backwards and forwards to this because we do want to keep this fairly tight.
Yep.
Now, Margaret, just walk us through this one. What is fractional recruitment? Because Alex has talked a little bit about it, and you've got some points here.
Yeah. So it's basically it's basically not a permanent hire. It's basically hired for a specific activity or expertise or specialty. It's quite flexible and it's embedded. It's not an external. It's not like an external consultant, like for example KPMG or PwC or the Deloittes. And it's usually like an independent person that's been, I guess, cherry picked from the recruiter or the intermediary for their specialty to be able to do some work, and they're embedded in the organisation. So that's pretty much what kind of in a nutshell what fractional recruitment is about.
Because that doesn't sound any different to consulting to me, because the recruiter is sort of a pseudo consultant and they're still skimming money off the top. So they put that person in with probably little management. As a consulting company, you have some more hands-on management of that person. As a contractor, though, Margaret, because a lot of us are contractors, what's the difference?
So the contractor is employed by the organisation or the client, and a fractional consultant would be employed by the recruiter, and they would be embedded in the organisation. They would not hand off their expertise to a junior or an intern, like you may find in a bigger consulting company, where the client is saying, we want a big consulting company, so it's the company that's doing the work, and it may be that a senior goes in but the junior does the work. Whereas in the fractional, it's actually that actual person that's embedded in the organisation. It's not the consulting company. It's
so,
that
Alex,
person.
If I may, sorry, Susanne, but
you've
does that
got
mean,
some
Margaret,
experience, haven't you? Sorry?
I was just going to ask Margaret then, but is that person that's now been embedded into the organisation, is the implication because it's fractional, it's short term?
That's right. It's usually short term.
Fine.
Yeah.
So, okay. Alex, have you actually done this? Have you been a fractional project manager?
I have. I did it recently with Sydney Airport, and they brought me in to do pretty much all of the project, because it was a fairly small project. It was basically just putting some documentation, sorting out their knowledge management on their SharePoint site, and it lasted 2 months. And it was relatively simple, and I basically provided the tools, the project management tools for the solution architect and for their business and for the airport. So we worked very collaboratively with the airport, but there was basically a guy that had organized me and the solution architect, and then interfaced, and he worked at the Sydney Airport full time, and he managed that relationship. But we just did the architecture, the design, the project management, the RAID, the risks and issues log, etc. I did the schedule. And then that was it.
Okay. So there was no recruiter or anybody involved. It was literally
it was
the
a
company.
direct relationship.
Okay.
And again, I'm kind of struggling with this recruiter. Does the recruiter in the middle there, does that not actually slow down the process and complicate matters, which is, I thought, going against the grain of fractional recruitment? No.
So generally, the recruiter might have availability or a bigger network of clients. And also they will have they might have a whole book or a whole consortium of fractional consultants. And as we go through the slides, and this does come up, recruiters may actually have a database, and some clients might subscribe to that database, and then they'll be able to cherry pick any of the specialty expertise or special consultants that they want with particular expertise. And so that's kind of a bit
almost
later.
That's almost another discussion, because the way that you put the teams together, I would not trust a recruiter. But however, I'm a little bit anti-recruiter. Sorry. Okay. Now the next slide, and I know Margaret's done this slide, but Alex, if first you can just comment on that, fractional versus consulting versus headhunting, because we started talking a little bit about this. Is it really clear? And then Margaret, I might get you to follow up on that one, because that's quite an important slide that you've got there.
Yes, I think that the line that I'm drawn to, because obviously what we've got here, and for the people watching, we're looking at sort of timeline, cost structure, who you get, loyalty to, which is what I was fascinated by, and sits inside the organization or not, and their exit strategy. And the thing that gets me is loyalty. And I think that's another reason why I think we're talking about fractional management, is because I think the loyalty, the underlying and embedded loyalty between a company, a client, and its workforce, I think that loyalty is slowly eroded over time. And I think there is I think the people that are looking at the opportunity here for fractional management see it as, you're a gun for hire. Yeah, to put it bluntly, and so I think that loyalty, whereas the traditional headhunter, what's loyal to them? It's the fee that they're going to derive from matching client with candidate. On the consulting firm, it's their firm, and with the fractional, it's the project. So, and I think that kind of sums it up for me as to. As a PM, and most of my colleagues who are PMs, that once they get a project, they're absolutely focused on delivering the deliverables within that project. Timelines are obviously they kind of reduce as you go through that headhunting, consulting, and fractional models. Cost structure, I couldn't really comment on the cost structure, but I guess that's pretty on the mark there. So we're looking at, with traditional headhunting, of 20 to 30% of salary. Consulting, we're looking at a high daily rate plus a margin, and then fractional recruitment looking at a project scoped fee. And I think, again, which of those is easier to manage? Is it easier to manage someone that you bring in for a short term and say, right, we've allocated you, I don't know, $1,500 a day, we're going to have you for 2 weeks, boom, we know what we're getting and we know how much it's going to cost us. So I think there's a simplicity as you go towards fractional management, and obviously I'm going to be promoted that because that's something that I've done, and I think it's a way that a lot of the workforce are going.
So Margaret, just a comment on this then, because it's quite a detailed slide, so I don't want to go right through it again. But as Alex was talking, I was reading it, there's also interim management. Like, where is that fitting in as well? There's a lot of balls in the air currently, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I know you've got more detail on the cost structure in a slide too, so we'll concentrate on that when we get to it.
Okay, so just moving on to the charge out rates, and pretty much if the client pays, for example, a daily rate of $800 to $2,000 per day, say for a project manager, intermediary, that is like the recruiter, they would earn like 5 to 15% of that daily rate, and so the net fractional rate that the fractional employee gets would be less that 5 to 15%. So it might be like $650 to $1,600 a day,
which is still consulting or basic contractor through a recruiter, exactly the same. So currently, mind you, consulting generally charges more and has a slightly bigger margin.
Yes,
but we're still doing that first line is basically the same. So I've not seen any difference yet. And I know I'm being argumentative, but still.
Yeah, it's pretty much the intermediary fee it's a lot less than the consultant fee. And then these are different ways of actually charging out. So you might have a monthly retainer. So that might be for a particular purpose. You might be asked to do a report or a certain thing, and it might be like $5,000 to $18,000 a month for that particular job that you've been asked to do.
Which you've got deliverables for specifically?
agreed days or agreed deliverables. So it might be that
Yep.
you're going to work, I don't know, 20 days, or you're going to do a particular report and it needs to be done, and then you're going to get paid for that particular item of work. And so the margin for the intermediary might be, say, $150 to $400 a day, and and then therefore the income that the fractional person gets would be, basically the retainer less the fee. So that's what the difference would be. And you might have, for example, a project milestone where, if we hit this particular thing, I don't know, it might be that a software is developed or something is done, then it might, the payment by the client might be relating to that. And, or it could be a subscription model, for example, from the intermediary, as I just mentioned slightly briefly before, where, the intermediary has a database of, different fractional consultants or fractional employees, and the client pays a subscription to that database, and then they're able to access, a whole heap of fractional consultants, and then they can cherry pick the ones they want based on their experience.
I'm just going to butt in there just because I find the recruiter has a database of people like all of us that they pick up and put into a place if they're fortunate. I don't know that all of them, some of them probably do, are that they finesse the quality of the person in their recruiting database, right? So when you're talking now about fractional, we want quality people to be placed in, not just anybody. And certainly when you're doing consulting, you have got quality people that have gone through your consulting, framework. The other thing to note too is what you're paying for in a consultant is a methodology that has been developed by the consultant or by the consulting company. And so it's a one-stop, bang, drop. Now, this is probably going to be, and I know I'm sort of going off track, Margaret, but this is a really interesting subject because maybe we don't need all of that anymore. Maybe we don't need people to bring all this stuff. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, Margaret, but I'm conscious of time. And Alex, I wanted to get your take on this as well, what I've just said and also what Margaret said.
Sure. Absolutely. Just quickly, it's interesting that with the consultant side, I think call it an integrator, call it a consultant. I think a lot of what they're quite keen is because obviously they're getting their fee, but they're also looking to upsell you with change requests. So every time that there's a marginal change, well, I'm sorry, that's going to be a change request. You go, oh, hang on, and then you have this ongoing, and then you have this perennial discussion about, well, hang on, we specified that in the requirements, and now you're charging me a change request. So, oh, well, you should have. It wasn't made clear at the start, at the point of requirements.
But they're not good. They're not good consulting companies. That's just
they're not
how they work, right? But they don't all work like that. But anyway, sorry.
But also to your point about bringing the methodology, because obviously with a fractional operator, they have their method, they have the skills, they've got all of that experience, because usually it's someone who's got who's been around the block a few times. They've got their in my case a project management methodology, and they apply it, whether it's waterfall or agile or anything or hybrid or anything like that. They bring that with them, and I think there has to be a certain amount of trust. And I think this is a word we haven't really sort of talked about yet, is trust between the client and the fractional manager. Comes in and say, right, we trust you because we think you know what you're doing. You're going to come in and do it. I'm not someone that they've just plucked out of Airtasker, for example, which is what you got me thinking. Which is what you got me thinking, Susanne, when you said, well, you want to trust in their skills. If you just pluck someone out of Airtasker, you don't really know. No, you're just asking them to mow the lawn. But in these particularly very complex environments, you're asking someone to bring their A game, bring their method, bring their talent and their skills, but also to bring that ability to be able to absorb things very, very quickly, deliver, and then hop it.
Yes, you want to be able to be sure that they can get in and get out.
Yeah.
And Margaret, I know your next slide is talking about who wins in this scenario, and it still seems to me that we've got a whole bunch of balls in the air. You know, it's quite fluid, I think, at the moment. I don't know whether I'm wrong about that, but Margaret, who's winning in this, really?
Yeah, so all three parties win. So it's the client, the recruiter, and the fractional consultant, because the fractional consultant is being placed in short-term assignments, and the client gets to pay a fraction of the cost. They don't have to pay for, you know, an internal hire. They don't have to pay for like someone who's a consultant that's got their own, you know, invoicing and company, or they don't have to pay for a consulting company that then is delegates the work to a junior or a you know, someone, an intern,
or oversees it. There's somebody overseeing.
That's right,
or
oversees it. It's the actual fractional consultant that goes in and is assigned to do the work. So basically, all three parties actually win in this scenario. You know, the expertise is by that fractional consultant, and the recruiter wins because they get a fee. The client wins because it's that expertise that is doing the work and is embedded in the organisation, and there's no redundancy, there's no notice period, there's no sick leave, there's no all of that other stuff that, you know, a lot of permanent employees.
And it's overhead.
It's additional overhead, and the fractional consultant actually gets to experience a lot of different things. So it might be a lot of issues, a lot of different sort of work. They get to experience a lot of industries, organizations, and different types of work in the project management. So one might be that, for example, you're requested to do a business case, but another, as Alex was saying, another client may just want a schedule to be done, or, you know, organizational planning to be done, and then they walk out and they've done that bit of work and they move on to the next fractional, you know, piece of work.
Now this is it. See, this is fascinating, right? Because, and I'll go to you next, Alex, because normally you're hired as a project manager, and there's all, as we know, all sorts of project managers. We want a technical, we want a this, which is a whole other discussion that we've had before. So the client doesn't necessarily understand what project management is about. Margaret, you and I talked about this like literally last week. The recruiter, in my experience, is clueless mostly. Sorry, recruiters, but if you think you're really good, please get in touch with me. They often haven't got a clue about project management process and mechanics, right?
Yep.
So you go in there as a project manager and you're basically working out what you have to do. But this what we're now talking about seems to me to place more accountability on the transactional person that's there, and it also, I think, sort of assumes that whoever is hiring or getting this transactional person has some idea where that person's going to fit, instead of going, I just need a project manager. I mean, Alex, I can see you're sort of nodding there. What's your take on it?
I was chomping at the bit there. I think it's interesting because I think what Margaret was implying, there was a certain generalist type of employer, be they fractional, be they contractor, but and that's interesting, particularly in my personal case, because I probably consider myself to be a generalist PM. I've been across a lot of sectors and dealt with a lot of different types of customers. But I think the trend, and if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at a lot of the job boards these days, they're looking for very specific skills. If you've done ERP multiple times, you've kind of become typecast. But I think that's the way the job market is going, is they like to say, right, if you've done a Salesforce or a ServiceNow, or you've done something really big and meaty, we want you. Whereas I think it's interesting to see if there's which way we're going, and I with regards to whether you're a generalist or whether you're an actual expert in that particular, be it a technology or in that particular sector. So, you know, if you've done airports, if you've done ERP, you know, that kind of just pigeonholes you. And it's interesting to see if the market is moving away from that towards a more no, doesn't matter really where you've specialized in the past, the fact that you can just deliver.
So yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Alex. So I know that the Australian Institute of Project Management have actually lobbied the government and requested the government to actually create a project management, industry, I guess, or, like a specialist employment category.
Yep.
Because it is in its own right an actual category, and it's acknowledged in the US, in the UK, in New Zealand, in Canada, but not in Australia. So what you're saying, Alex, is a lot of clients or employers are looking to employ a project manager, not because that's the industry, but because it's not an industry. The industry is finance, or the industry is construction, and they want someone that's done that work and put them and typecast into that particular bucket. But in its own right, it is actually a profession. And so, and that's what, the email that I got, because I am a member, did say that it is a generalist profession, and, that's how it should be seen. And that's why they're trying to lobby the government for that reason. So that's unfortunate that clients or employers see it like that. And I see it as a way, because they want to cut costs. They want someone that can hit the ground running and has particular industry experience. They know the lingo. They've done that work before, like you said, and that's the reason why they do. And it's unfortunate because project management as a profession is really like an umbrella profession. It should cut across, all industries, not just specific to ERP or SAP or whatever the lingo is going to be.
And I think you're right. I think that in those particular industries, they are looking. I mean, it probably lends itself to fractional management. Is that if you are a specialist, if you've done a particular industry for many years, then your chances of getting employment on a short-term basis is probably very, very high. Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying about the US and in Europe as well, where it's recognized as a profession, because obviously, I think fractional management is a lot more mature there. I think the gig economy itself is much more mature than it is here. Same in the UK, and I think we're relatively new in New Zealand, Australia and New Zealand to this concept.
So why now? And we sort of talked about this a little bit before. We sort of touched on it a little bit before. Is it just, is it AI? Is it that there are more people that know how things work in terms of project management? Not sure about that one, but you never know. Have we all got a really bad taste in our mouth about the big four consulting companies, and we just don't want to do that stuff, and we don't need that stuff anymore? We don't need the size of it. Are we all sick to death of recruiters and that whole model about, interviewing millions of people? What is going on? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm just going on to the next slide, and I can see that, the Great Resignation, which happened, during COVID or after COVID, or pretty much after, basically people were thinking, why am I doing this job? I hate this job. And, they were evaluating their position and the company, their job, and thinking, I don't like this anymore. And so it then spurred on a lot of, gig type work, and where people could, trial at first, and also, so that's one reason. Another reason is that AI has basically expedited a lot of our jobs and made things that we do a lot faster. So scheduling, cost estimation and things like that can be, pretty much done by AI. Planning, doing your status updates can all be done by AI. And so, a lot of that automation then has enabled a project manager to complete the work or actually take on more projects or more work, and also, compress timelines within the organization, say from, 12 months down to, 3 months to 6 months. And so it's, 3 to 9 months as I've got there. And so it's a different sort of, landscape that we've got now, and that's, that's one reason. A lot of professionals then, because of that great resignation, because of, COVID period, chose to set up their own consulting company or their own, be an independent, professional, and basically go out and charge rates. And then that created another opportunity that for clients to take those people rather than big consulting companies.
Yeah.
And I think the economic uncertainty also made permanent overhead a liability, where clients or companies didn't want to invest in a long-term hire because of all these other overheads, sick leave, long service leave, and holidays and all this sort of stuff. And so it made the fractional consultants a lot more attractive to the client and also to independent consultants.
Wow, Alex, are we more flexible doing it this way?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think the insecurity is palpable out in the workforce, not just on the small, medium businesses, but also at the larger corporates, the enterprises. They're kind of watching their capital expenditure. And if there is that sort of reservation about whether we go with a large company, a large integrator, or a large consultant, or do we go with a short-term quick win kind of scenario, and I think there's definitely an employer's market out there. There was the big resignation that Margaret referred to, but also there's the big retrenchment that's going on at the moment. You've got the large companies letting people go. I know Atlassian in my industry is probably the most famous, and of course they're releasing people onto the market, and again they're probably coming to at that point in their careers where they're thinking, okay, I might just set up my own business and become an independent sole trader, or become a fractional worker. So I think there's a lot. I think that insecurity is probably added to the reason why it's such a hot topic, and I think it's very pertinent to the times we live in.
Wow, I mean, early on in this discussion, I talked a bit about how I did things in my consulting company, because I'm really good at the planning part. I can set it up for 3 years, do the whole, I've got a package that's repeatable and I can do it for different projects. And then I could swap myself out for one of my consultants, like I said, that could just do the project. But one of my challenges when I've not had a company is I've got to try and do the whole project, which I can do, but I'm actually best at doing that other part. So if there was a fractional project management or leadership then when I was trying to get work then, that's what I would have done. And I would have just gone in and done that. And it probably takes me 3 months or so to do it, and then just get out, because I actually get bored. But sorry, people out there, but I actually get bored doing the project. I like to get in and get out. So I can see how this is likely happening. And I know we've got a time constraint on you, Margaret, but I think it's really going to be interesting when we sum up, because I think that there's so much more to talk about. Now, Margaret, you've got a slide about does it work, the evidence, but I'm really keen to go to the risks. And if we can just talk a little bit about that last slide, the risks, watch outs, and what's next, because we might have to have a part 2 of this one. There's a lot in this.
Yep. So I know that with consultants, for example, if, and you'd have to check this with your accountant or with the tax office, but, if they're like looking after one particular client, for example, in a working year, it might be that they're really considered as an employee of the company.
Yeah, 80-20 rule.
Yes, 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Whereas a fractional consultant, if, like Alex was saying, he did a fractional assignment for 2 months, so he was, that's only 2 months out of 12, so it's not 80-20. It's not 80%. So he's going in and he's doing a bit of work here, and he might go on and do another assignment somewhere else. So it's not really, it is classified as a fractional consultant. I think, so one of the other risks is because the commitment is diluted, it's a very small amount of time. And some fractional consultants might, for example, only go in, for example, for 1 day of the week, and then another day of the week they're at another, client's site.
Which is consulting anyway. That's what we used to do. But still, there you go.
So I think that's a risk as well. And also the cultural misfit, the fractional consultant may not culturally fit in.
True.
It's not like when you, I guess, interview someone for a permanent hire, you're looking to see whether they would, fit into the team. You're really wanting them to come in, do their thing, go out, and so you're not really checking that there's a cultural fit. And then the other thing is that because you are actually hiring a fractional consultant, the knowledge might actually, walk out the door. It's not actually, it's not actually, embedded a lot.
Embedded, which has been an ongoing problem. And I'm sort of I'm going to start wrapping up now because we've got 4 minutes left for Margaret.
Yeah.
What Margaret's got on this last slide, if you're out there watching, you will see what's next for the market. I think that is another segment that we should do if both of you two would like to participate. And the other thing I'd really like to know from you, Alex, and probably we don't have time now, well, we don't, in 4 minutes, how it literally works, because we know consulting company contracts, we know how recruiters work, like the mechanics. I think that would be really good to look at. But if I can just throw to you now, Alex, and if you can sort of wrap up the discussion we've had from your perspective.
I think it's been a fascinating perspective. I think there's obviously pros and cons on all of those sides. I think with regards to where it's successfully used, it's probably more in the small medium businesses that where it becomes far more more agile, far more flexibility there. I don't think it's probably going to be the larger, the Telstras, the government. I don't think the government would ever really sort of look into this, and please correct me if your research defies that, Margaret, but I think that it's far more it's a tool. And I think it's something that small businesses can leverage quite quickly. So yes, I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I think I've certainly learned some information and some context that I didn't know before. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks very much for joining us, Margaret. You've got like 2 minutes. If you can give us a 2-minute wrap up before we finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a great opportunity for small to medium enterprise to be able to utilize, really important expertise and specialty expertise that they may not otherwise have been able to, tap into. And it's definitely, I think, something that's going to continue.
Oh, excellent. It has been a fascinating discussion. Mechanics, we definitely need to do another one of these. If you're out there, watch for the website, because you'll see your project management is your superpower. Well, certainly mine. And they'll be for sale soon. And it's with the Play More Golf ones. And if you've been watching the channel, you'll know that I say Play More Golf, and there's a reason for that. Subscribe to the channel. If there's something that you'd like to know, or you'd like to submit and ask a mentor question, go to the website, link will be below, and you can fill it out and you can be anonymous. And Margaret and I will answer your question when we get it, usually in a month or so, depends how many questions we've got. Alex, it's been fantastic. We've had a really good discussion. Margaret, thank you so much. And
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Very stimulating discussion. And please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks, everyone.